Hello! So today I want to talk about 10 seriously messed up movies that you might only want to watch once. And these are going to be in no particular order, but they're just going to be movies that I thought were seriously gruesome or disturbing or just left you feeling a bit gross after watching them. And yeah, you can check them out if you want to, but let's get into it. So usually on my channel, I am recommending things, anything from movies to TV series and video games, things like that. And I try to do things fairly spoiler free. So if there's something in the trailer that I think is a bit of a spoiler or just gives something away that I think should be experienced for the first time when you're experiencing the thing, I usually chop it out. So that being said, some of these movies, I can't really specify what makes it disturbing because it might ruin part of the plot. So I'm going to try and do it as spoiler free as I possibly can and give you as much information as I can without ruining it. First up, we have a movie called Bite. Now this one is about a bachelorette who goes on holiday with her friends for a bachelorette party and gets up to a bit of mischief, and then also goes swimming in a sort of secluded cave with her friends. She gets a bite underwater on her thigh, and when she gets home it gets very infected and it starts to take over, as for want of a better term. She starts to become this almost sort of hybrid of like a reptile and a bug and almost like a fish. It's really strange. She starts giving birth to this almost like frog spawn, and her whole apartment becomes like a lair. It's quite disgusting. Apparently it made people like faint and throw up in the premiere, but I mean, a lot of films say that and don't really deliver. But this one was pretty gross and does make you feel a bit sick when you're watching some of the things that happen in it. I will say that it's probably not the most gruesome one on this list, but I do know people who have watched it and said that they would not watch it again just because of how it made them feel and just because of just how gross and sort of slimy everything was. So yeah, check out Bite if you want to. So next up we have a movie called The Neon Demon. And I actually loved this movie. This is probably the one on the list that I've watched the most. So it's not one that I would say personally I'll never watch again, but I know other people who have said that they would not. Without spoiling too much of the plot, it is about a newcomer in the fashion world who is making everyone around her feel very threatened by her potential and her stardom. And it's very, very stylish. It's very well made. It looks stunning, and the soundtrack is incredible. It's got a kind of almost like a dark synthwave vibe to it. Sometimes it comes off as a little bit pretentious, but I really loved the style of it. And I will say that this has a couple of themes in it which are quite taboo, one of which being necrophilia, and that scene is quite disturbing. I'll also note that this film does have quite a long strobing scene, so if you're sensitive to any sort of photosensitive flashing, things like that, I would proceed with caution. But if you can watch this, watch it on the biggest screen possible just because it looks stunning and the colours are so gorgeous, but it does have a very disturbing end to it. Next up we have a British horror movie called Mum and Dad. Now this one is all about a cleaner who is stranded at work really late at night, and her really lovely friend decides that she's going to take her home because that's the safest thing, so she's going to go home with her. When she goes home with her friend, she realises that all is not as it seems, and she is now trapped in a house with a family who are incredibly disturbing and basically like to torture and murder people. There's some incredibly gruesome set pieces in this. There's some really shocking moments, and it just gives you this really uneasy, gross feeling. The family just come off as this really sort of twisted group of people. I will say that it's one that I've only watched, I'd say, once or twice. It's not something that I would recommend if you're not a fan of like gore. But it's definitely one to check out if you want to see something that's pretty gross. Next up, we have a movie called We Need to Talk About Kevin. Now, this one is probably disturbing in a different way to some of the others. And this one is all about a mother, played incredibly by Tilda Swinton, who gives birth to a son that she just does not bond with. She is dealing with postnatal depression, and she's also missing a lot of her old life. So her child Kevin goes from being a sort of a bit of a naughty problem child to growing up to being an absolute sociopath, and is played fantastically by Ezra Miller. He's just incredibly disturbing in this. The film is told out of sequence, so it's documenting almost parts of the mother's life before Kevin's childhood, and then also the consequences of some of his actions. There is a very disturbing scene at the end which sort of culminates in what Kevin's plans have been all along. This film plays on lots of different fears, I guess, for new parents, which are, am I going to bond with my child? Am I going to even like my child? Is my child going to be a problem? Are they going to be not a very nice person? And it deals with lots of different issues around that as well. It's a very unnerving film, and it's incredibly well crafted, but not one that I think you could sit through multiple times. Next up, we have Skins. No, this isn't the TV series set here in Bristol. This is a Spanish movie, and it is just the weirdest thing I've seen in a long time. This one is all about various characters who have different kinds of deformities. Some are very fantasy. There's a girl who has a butthole for a mouth and a mouth for a butthole, and also one that was born with no eyes completely. There are also other kinds of people that are living with different kinds of deformities and accidents, but on the whole it's meant to be a little bit tongue-in-cheek, a little bit fantasy, and also sort of teach you a lesson about how to treat people, I guess. But this movie is all about how these people interact in the world and find their place in the world. I have to say, it's stunning to look at. The whole colour palette for this movie is a sort of washed out pink or lavender purple, and it's just a sight to behold, really. It looks incredible, the way that they've done it. But the stories that they tell and some of the interactions that some of the characters have are so strange and very disturbing at times. So I will say that even though it's not particularly extreme, it's just a sort of quite quirky movie, it's definitely not one that I would rush to watch again. Next, we have a movie called The Woman. Now, this one is all about a father who goes into the woods and discovers this feral woman played by Pollyanna McIntosh, who is fantastic in this. She is so scary. And he decides that he's going to capture her, take her home, and then rehabilitate her and put her back into society. But he doesn't. He basically chains her up in a barn and starts to abuse her in various different ways. You realise that the father is very misogynistic and is very cruel to his family, and his son is taking on quite a few of his traits already. This one has some very messed up elements in it, and you're just kind of waiting for the woman's revenge and hoping that she gets it. It has a few twists as well and has some really unnerving scenes in it. So I recently found out that this movie is the middle part of sort of a trilogy. So it starts off with a movie called The Offspring, which is where you find out how this woman became feral and what happened to her. And then the next movie is called Darlin, which kind of focuses on one of the other characters who are in this movie. So I'm going to check those two out and see what they're like. But if you can stomach it, check out The Woman. Now we have a movie that had to be on this list, and it is a French movie called Irreversible. If you've never seen this before, it is unforgettable. Basically, it is a film that is told in reverse, so the sort of very brutal climax of the movie is right at the beginning, and it's the part that probably disturbs people the most. This movie is kind of a revenge story. It centers around a couple played by Monica Bellucci and Vincent Cassel, who were a couple in real life at the time and do have kids together. And basically Monica's character gets attacked and brutally raped in a sort of underground pass, and it's an incredibly hard scene to watch, I have to say. It's probably the part that disturbed me the most about this movie, because it's all done in one shot. It does not look away, and there's no cuts, so it's quite hard to watch. And obviously Vincent's character decides that he is going to take revenge and find the person who did this. And obviously that's what you experience at the beginning of the movie. The thing I found strange about this movie is that obviously because it's told in reverse, the closer you get to the end, the more sort of normal and sweet and mundane the movie becomes. And that means that you have a sort of little bit more empathy for the characters by the end. But at the beginning, you're still trying to figure out why this is all happening. And recently, I think there's been a new version of this movie that's been brought out where it is actually in chronological order. So you can watch it as a normal film. And I think it might work as a normal film, and just like Memento, you can watch it like that. But I really like the concept of it just being completely backwards, and that's what made it so sort of fresh and disturbing originally. So if you haven't seen this, proceed with caution, but it's definitely one that you'll never forget. So next we have another French movie, and this one is called Raw. This is the one that I've seen most recently, and I actually really liked it, even though it did make me feel a little bit sick in places. But this one is all about a girl who is a vegetarian, and she is going to go to a veterinary school, and it's the same college that her sister is in. When she arrives at the college, she realizes that she has to go through a series of really horrible hazing rituals. They pour blood on them, take some of their possessions and throw them out the window. They line them all up and have them do various horrible things. And one of them is to eat an animal's organ. And she discovers that she starts to have a taste for raw flesh. And as the movie progresses, things start to unravel and she gets slowly worse, and several revelations are revealed. I don't want to spoil it, and I don't want to give too much away, but I did find that the twists in this movie had me on the edge of my seat, and I did find it, even though it was quite disturbing, I found it really original and very clever. So if you can track this movie down, I would say check it out. You might find it a bit disgusting, but it's definitely worth the ride. So our penultimate pick is one called Audition, and this is a Japanese movie. It's quite a famous one, and this one is all about a widower who is trying to get back into the dating game. He does this by setting up a fake production and starts to audition actresses in the hopes of one of them becoming someone that he could potentially date. He auditions a girl called Asami, who is a very beautiful, very sweet girl, and he starts to fall in love with her and become a little bit obsessed. We quickly find out that maybe Asami was the one that was doing the auditioning for him, and that she has a really dark secret and is actually a bit of a psychopath. She is an extremely violent killer and likes to torture her victims very, very sadistically, and with some pretty gruesome outcomes. So this movie, if you're ready for it, it will take you on quite a strange ride. It has a lot of different sequences where you think something's happened and it hasn't, but it really takes you on quite a journey. It is very disgusting in places and it's very memorable, but Audition's one that you're really not going to forget if you watch it. So before our final pick, I want to hear from you. Have you seen any of these movies? Are there any movies that you think should be on this list that didn't make the cut? Is there any that you've seen that you never want to watch again? I know that this could have been a huge list. There are a lot of films that I missed out on this one, so I might make another one of these videos at some point. But let me know in the comments below your thoughts, and also if you enjoyed this video or any of my other videos, obviously think about subscribing. It really helps me out. It helps me reach a few more people, and also it means that you'll see the next video that I make. So win-win. So last but certainly not least is a movie that I've only seen once and probably do not want to watch again, and it is a film called Martyrs from 2008. So this is another French movie, and this one is about a girl called Lucy who was held captive and tortured for a year. She was missing, and loads of people were looking for her. When she finally escapes, she decides to track the family down who held her captive, and she gets her revenge in a really brutal way. But usually that would be the end of the movie, and it's not. So she finds out that there are obviously other girls that have gone through this, and other people that are involved in this. This thing goes a lot deeper, it's a lot bigger than this one family, and there are lots of secrets that unravel that just make this a really disturbing and gross movie. So there are some very difficult scenes to watch in this movie. It is very, very gruesome. And a lot of people have compared it to the Saw movies. I would say that the Saw movies are a little bit sillier than this in some places, and maybe not as dark and disturbing. I know that the Saw movies are quite dark, but also it's very much about the shock factor, whereas this one I think is doing it obviously for some shocks, but also to show you really how far these people will go to reach their goal. So it makes it a little bit darker for me. I will say that if you can track this down, watch the French version. There is a remake that was done of this version in 2015, and it's just not as good because it's not as disturbing, if that makes sense. But yeah, if you can find Martyrs and you want to put yourself through it, go ahead and watch it, I guess. So that's it. That's 10 really messed up movies that you might only want to watch once. I will say that obviously, as I mentioned before, there might be another one of these coming very soon, so keep a lookout for it, and obviously let me know in the comments if there are any that didn't make this list that you think I should watch. And yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, I guess, and let me know what you think if you watch any of these movies. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.